every
Did you hit
time.
him? Are you having trouble on the battlegrounds controlling that recoil? Well, don't you worry, I am here today to give you some tips and hints on how to improve that recoil control. What is recoil, you may ask? Well, recoil is the backwards movement the shooter feels as a gun is discharged. And in PUBG, oh boy, can you feel that? You need to learn how to compensate for that recoil when going around the battlegrounds. It is unlike any other game you have ever played. So let's learn how to control that recoil. How does it work in PUBG then? Well, as you can see on the screen right now, this is me shooting my gun, not controlling the backwards movement of the gun at all. And you can see this gun hits the sky. Now, there's a few things we can do to learn how to control this recoil, bring it down to make it so you can hit them enemies as you go on the battlegrounds. The first thing we need to understand, there is two types of recoil in the game. We have vertical recoil. That is obviously the vertical spread of your bullets when you shoot your gun. And we also have the horizontal recoil. Obviously, the horizontal line. The left and rightness when you shoot your gun. You don't have to worry about horizontal recoil too much when you're getting to learn this game, especially if we're going to use the easier guns and warm myself up to it. The vertical recoil is the main one, and that is how we're going to learn to control today. How do we control that recoil? Well, it's as simple as pulling down your stick at a consistent speed. Well, it would be, except everybody has different controller settings, and it depends on what gun you're using. Basically, the higher your sensitivity, the less you have to pull down on the stick. But this doesn't always mean higher sensitivity is better. The best way to do this is to jump into training ground, pick yourself up a M4, and test your recoil control. Stand about the distance we are from a wall right now, and try spraying at the wall and controlling your recoil, just like I am doing here. If you're finding the recoil too hard to pull down, go into your settings, adjust your vertical sensitivity. Up this just a little bit till you can bring that recoil all the way down. If you're bringing your gun down, do the opposite. Lower your vertical sensitivity just a little bit. This will take a little bit of messing about with, but eventually you'll be able to pull your gun sort of into the center. But don't worry if you still can't control it directly. There's a few things we can do to make it even easier to control that recoil. Tip number one, now this is a big one and you don't see many new players doing it. Crouching and standing still. This is what most players forget on the battlegrounds, is if you crouch when taking shots, it will automatically reduce your recoil and make it so much easier to hit your shots. This is easy to do, but it takes a bit of practice to get this into your muscle memory. On the screen right now, you can see the benefits of crouching. Now, if you're also standing still, this means you're going to miss more. You're not going to be strafing left or right. And you can see if you're walking forwards, you seem to miss a lot more. So, get yourself crouching, get yourself standing still. Now, I know this is very hard to learn, but when doing this, it's going to increase your accuracy tenfold, especially if you're crouching and leaning behind a tree or something so you can quickly dip back in. But if you can learn to crouch in most of your gunfights, and stand still, if you're at a little bit of range, it'll make it much easier as displayed on screen right now. Attachments. There's so many attachments in this game and it's a little bit confusing. So should we make this as easy as we can? A grip. Most of your guns in the battlegrounds are going to need a grip. And the best grip to just go with if you don't want to learn all of them is the vertical grip. This grip automatically reduces more vertical recoil than any other grip in the game and automatically increase your chances of being able to control your recoil as shown on screen. Always easy to remember when you're in the battlegrounds that a vert grip is very, very important. If you can't find it, you can chuck on the other grips. But if you find a vert, chuck that on your gun, it's very, very important. Also, with the grips, you've got your comp and flash hider. It's very well known that the compensator helps reduce recoil, but so does the flash hider. Simply just by adding a comp or a flash hider, it will also reduce that recoil management you need to do, especially if you're very, very new to the game. These are very, very important. The loot on the battlegrounds is a bit scarce, so them compensators aren't really everywhere. You normally find them later in the game if you loot for a very, very long time, but the flash hiders are much more common and also do that reduced recoil. So if you cannot find a compensator, use the flash hider. It is to remember though that the compensator does help even more than the flash, but it's harder to find. The last attachment only goes on some guns, like the M4, the MP5K, that is the tac stock. This will also help you reduce recoil when using these guns, and it gives you an extra benefit to using the M4 compared to other ARs. You can put a stock, grip, flash hider, and comp onto these guns to have even more accuracy when using these assault rifles. So if you find a stock and you're using an M4, make sure you chuck that stock on. The stock, remember, the stock only goes on certain guns, but will also help you control that recoil. So you're new to the battlegrounds and you're finding all of your guns are very, very hard to use. Well, which one should you use if you're trying to find it a little bit easier? Well, the first tip is SMGs. SMGs have great recoil control. They're very, very good from close to medium range and even far range sometimes, what makes these a must pick up if you are trying to learn recoil. You must remember these weapons will have a damage drop-off at certain ranges. Anything past 50 meters, these guns start to get a little bit more weak, but it doesn't mean they are not accurate and cannot kill. If you're going to pick up an SMG, I suggest you use either the UMP or the Bison. The UMP is undoubtedly the best SMG in the game, but it has a bit of a lower mag, and if you're missing and trying to get used to hitting your shots, it can be a little bit harder to use at range. The Bison, on the other hand, it's a little bit weaker, but it has a 53 mag. This SMG makes it amazing for learning your recoil as you have longer and further recoil control. The ARs, it's basically as simple as using any 5s gun. If you don't know what a 5s gun is, it's basically the M4, the G363, and the SCAR. The M4 takes more attachments than the other two. The SCAR is very, very easy to use without much at all. You just tuck on the vertical grip and it becomes one of the easiest guns to use in the game. So carry that SCAR around with a UMP, you guys should be looking very good. But make sure you search for them attachments, get them the grips, get them the compensators. If you get them looted and tooted, you're going to be destroying on the battlegrounds. If you're looking for them harder guns, just to put yourself straight into it, you could use any 7 gun. The AK, the barrel, very hard to use. The AK is nice though, as it only takes a compensator instead of a grip. So this means if you have a compensator on the end, that gun is looted and you can get very, very used to that muscle memory with using that weapon. Spraying over range is going to be difficult no matter what. The more you use a gun, the easier it will be to learn. It took me so long to learn how to do a 6x scope spray with an AK about 50-100 meters, but you can learn it if you learn these guns. It takes a lot of time, but the more you spend on it, you'll get it. Learning to crouch, learning not to move will make these guns even easier. But here's a tip for you just in case. The first few shots of any of your guns are going to be more accurate than the rest of a full spray. If you do a small burst with your gun rather than a full-on spray, the first 5 shots in your gun are going to be much more accurate and reduce your recoil. If you're adding the extra benefits of your attachment gun, crouching, and standing still, you're going to be able to laser a little bit more doing a small burst than a full spray if you're new. One more thing which can be very dangerous is that prone actually reduces the recoil the most, but this leaves you a sitting duck. You can't react quickly, you can't move away quickly. If you're going to take shots like this, it's better to know that the enemy isn't looking at you. The second the enemy realizes where you're laying, you need to get up and move. I would try not to prone unless you have to, as this is a very hard skill to learn when to do this properly without getting yourself beamed. These are the basics to learning how to control your recoil on the battlegrounds. Get the attachments, crouch, stand still. If you get all these things down, you will be able to increase your capability of controlling recoil in PUBG on console. These are the tips I have given you. Use them wisely, my fellow gamers. I will catch you on the next video, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and like. I'll see you soon. Peace.